we in the Salvation Army, we don't have a theology of gathered church being essential for some kind of meeting interaction with the divine. That's not our theology at all, but our churchmanship. But it's important because it's when we come together in fellowship that we learn from each other and we shape each other. And there's something special that happens when you're together with people, that you're able to interact with the Holy Spirit. So gathered worship, it's really all about the fellowship, but also the sense of we together, doing this together, we together, putting God first, we together meeting and setting aside time to corporately worship Jesus. To begin with, then that first week I think we met on the 15th of March, and that was the last time we met all together under normal circumstances. And then we quickly had to go online the same as everybody else, and we went onto Zoom. We've been doing a mixture of Zoom and broadcasting that on Facebook Live at the same time. The reason we used Zoom was because we felt that it's a way for people to actually be at church. What we didn't want was people just putting church on in the background but then getting on with making the Sunday lunch or getting dressed at the same time. We wanted people to really interact with each other and with Jesus, and we felt there was a level of accountability in having people there in the room. So we've had Zoom from March until the end of July, and it's gone really, really well, really well indeed, because people have felt that they've actually been at church. And actually we've had a lot of extra visitors coming as well, and that's been lovely. Throughout August, we met in small groups because many of our congregation were away. So we had small groups just following the same set of a set program that Nick, my husband, and he also leads the church with me, a program that we had set out. And then from the beginning of September, so we've done 2 weeks so far, this will be the third week this week, we have met as a gathered congregation in one group outside until we're completely freezing and it becomes difficult to listen. We've had to shorten our services a little bit to comply with the regulations, so just about an hour. I think if it's very cold, we'd have to shorten it a little bit more. And it might start to feel a little bit less like what we're used to. So at that point, we've got to make a decision about whether we go indoors and do 2 sequential services with people also watching on Facebook, or whether we go back to Zoom. I think the likelihood is we'd go back to Zoom. I should also add that as well as doing the outside full church gathered in one place experience that we're doing at the moment, we're also broadcasting that on Facebook, which has been a real learning curve, because I now understand that when the BBC do outside broadcasting, it's an absolute nightmare for them as well. And they have 3 technical solutions in place, because one always fails. Then they've got 2 backups in case the second one fails. So now we've learned that we've got a number of different options, because the technology always fails. No matter how much you plan, something will go wrong. So really that's where we're at the moment. Outside worship all together, gathered with live singing that we don't join in with. We're singing from our hearts, not with our mouths. And it's also broadcast live on Facebook for those who can't be there in person because they don't feel safe or because they are self-isolating. The plan is no plan. Basically, we are not making a plan. We are literally going week by week. I mean, us on the leadership team, we're thinking a little more than a week in advance, but we really are pushing it week by week. So as long as we can stay outside, we will. If the weather continues to be nice till the middle of October or even in the end of October, we'll do that, unless government restrictions change and we can't meet together as a church. Obviously, then we would have to rethink. Towards Christmas, we've had all kinds of crazy ideas, which I don't think we'll be able to use now because things have changed. But I think very much at Christmas time, by Christmas time, we'll be having our Sunday worship for the congregation, the general congregation. We'll be doing that on Zoom. But in terms of outreach and carol services, we're going to put that back on the streets. It's very Salvation Army tradition. We're going to do it back on the streets, and we're going to do carol services on your street where you are, just for the localized people where they are. I mean, this has thrown everything up in the air, right? And we've all had to rethink how we do church and what it means to be a member of a congregation. I'd say one of the pros of being online on this Zoom, particularly Zoom, we don't have the experience of just having, a YouTube church service. We've done it all on Zoom live, and one of the pros of that has been that we've heard from people who probably wouldn't have ordinarily spoken because they feel like they're just in their house speaking, despite the fact that they're speaking to everybody and they're being broadcast, but they will speak and share, and we've been able to utilize lots and lots of people, many more than we would have normally on a Sunday. So that's been a really good benefit. Another pro has been that extended families have joined us. We've had lots of grandparents joining in, So we've had the 3 generations, the grandchildren, the children, and then the parents, you know, all 3, the grandparents, all 3 there together. And we've been able to utilise that and get the grandparents to share their wisdom. But that's been a really special blessing actually for our church and for those families. The cons, you see, I think that if we stick online for too long, people are not going to want to get out of their pajamas. When we talked about what would happen in the winter, we said, oh, we're going to think about whether we have 2 sequential services or whether we just stay at home and in our PJs. And I laughed about it, but it's a genuine worry that if we continue to just have things online and we don't try to meet up in between, certainly for my own congregation I'm referring, I think people will start to fall into the pattern of not going out of the house on a Sunday morning, not even necessarily getting dressed, or just throwing something on at the last minute, and they'll get out of the rhythm and the regularity of having to do that. So we've intentionally put it in just to break it up a bit now, so that people have to get up and they have to get out, they have to get dressed, they have to be present. I mean, on Zoom you have to be present to a level. I think if you're a church that's just doing this on YouTube, you're going to be facing an even tougher challenge there, because you really don't even have to get out of bed in that instance to be at church. That's tough because people get into a pattern because they form habits. So we needed to break the cycle so that we could do that again. I'd say that's a con. We haven't struggled to have people back. I know a lot of churches have struggled to get their elderly members of the congregation back because they feel frightened. We have, because we've been outside, it's a bit easier, so we haven't struggled in that regard. I think we just have to wait and see, but we very much are very adaptable. We're just going with like what's happening, how can we work around this, how can we adapt to this and do the best thing that we can for the long life of our congregation.